This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.
I am René Brooks, and welcome back to Distraction. I am your guest host, and today we're going to be talking about this blog post that I wrote a few months ago. And I'm sure you're like, René, the blog? Like, who cares? We're on the podcast. I get it. However, we're going to talk about the post that I wrote a few months ago because I think that the topic is useful for ADHD women in general, but especially right now around this holiday time. We talked about the name of the blog post is But What Do You Do? It's about managing a household and mental load as an ADHD woman. And it's important right now at this time of year because in addition to all the things that we do around the house, making sure that the laundry is done, making sure that the kids, if you have them, get what they need, that the pets are taken care of, that there's some kind of cleanliness or organization going on around here, that our social obligations are filled. So much of that in heteronormative relationships lands in the lap of the woman. But what happens when the woman has ADHD? ADHD causes challenges with executive function. And if you don't remember what executive function kind of fiddles with, a few of the things that it really messes with is your ability to gauge time and your ability to organize and your ability to kind of project manage, so to speak. Keeping a household and a family running is big time project management. So when you're a woman who struggles in that area, it can be incredibly stressful for you. And not only is it stressful, it can be isolating because the people in your circle tend to not understand what's happening at all and not give you any type of sympathy. So I was inspired by all the information that I saw floating around in ADHD kind of support groups, whether it was on Facebook or Reddit and places like that, where people like us tend to gather. And so often, what you'll run into is people crying out for help because their spouses are so annoyed with them for the way that they keep the house. So often you see a post like, "Hey, can anyone tell me how to organize the house better? My husband is so mad at me. He says that I should be able to do better, and I've tried to explain ADHD to him, and he says that it's made up, or he says that that's not an excuse." The normal things that we hear. But what makes it significant to me is how much pain these women are in. So in the article, I talk about how when I was married, when I had a house to run and a family to kind of organize, I went to a church function for women and I was super stressed out. It was rare that I took any time to go do something like that because running a household sapped so much of my energy. And while we were all taking the time to talk to each other, I mentioned that my now ex-husband did the laundry and cooked because he was a classically trained chef. And the women's jaws dropped and they looked at me and they said, "But what do you do?" And I was so stung because what do I do? Well, I make sure that the kids have clean clothes and clothes that fit, which is something that a lot of dads don't focus on. I make sure that the household bills are paid. I make sure that the food he needs in order to cook it is there. I make sure that the rest of the house is completely clean because notice I said that he cooked. I never said he cleaned anything. Have you ever cleaned up? I struggle to clean up behind myself with ADHD. Imagine two adults with ADHD, two children, and two dogs. It was a nightmare, a constant flurry of dog fur and papers and laundry, which he didn't put away because doing laundry and cooking doesn't necessarily mean that you're completing those tasks because when you have ADHD, you might do the laundry and it might land in a pile on the floor that the dogs burrow into, and then the laundry is covered in dog fur and it's not really clean, then is it? So, what sounded very attractive to them on the face of it actually wound up being a real source of stress for me. Like, it actually may have been better for me if I had taken on those two chores because then I would have had them done in a way that was somewhat organized and also complete. And also, I wouldn't have to hear a person consistently complaining about the fact that they have to contribute to the household they live in, which is another part of the problem. So often, we teach the male children in our lives that they need a good woman to come along and smooth things out. And what do women traditionally smooth out? They make sure that you coordinate what's going to be brought for Thanksgiving. Can I get an amen, somebody? I know you guys just did it. They coordinate whether or not you've responded to the invites, the bake sales, the fundraisers. They make sure that your mom gets flowers on Mother's Day because you won't remember to do it. They make sure that you have clothes sometimes. My grandmother used to shop for everything that was worn by anybody in her household. So a lot of these traditional ideas of what a wife should be doing, again, I know I've said it like 5 times, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's true. A lot of that circles back and lands in our laps. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, part of my own experiences with ADHD, some days I struggle to feed myself. I've got four other people that I need to make sure eat. It might not happen real well. So that frustration led to a lot of shame for me because when I would try to express to the other women in my life that I was frustrated and I was sad and I needed help, they basically would come back to me and say, "Oh, well, he works all day and he's tired and he needs this and he needs a break and you just need to deal with it and this is just how it is." Mind you, we both work full time. So this is not a new conversation. There's so much that's going out on the web and talked about in spaces about women's mental load and women's work, so to speak. Now, we know as women that it's not women's work. Anyone could do it. But when you've been raised as a society to believe that that's not what you should be doing, that creates resentment and tension in a couple that is also not necessarily the thing you want to deal with. And when you're told your whole life that a woman is going to come along and smooth your path and make things simple for you, and you've married a woman who doesn't eat in a timely fashion and like leaves all her books all over the bathroom and loses every single item she touches, there are a lot of men who feel betrayed or deceived or tricked or cheated or like you're not doing these things that women do and you need to just shape up and do them. So they decide that they're going to like become your house coach. Well, if you just took the time to do the dishes this way, or if you just took a minute to write things down, or if you stopped being on that video game and just clean things up a bit. And this is something that I hear routinely from the other ADHD women in my life and from clients in my coaching practice. And the first question I always ask is, if it's not cleaned well enough, why is he coming to you? Why isn't he just doing it? And they all just kind of like the other end of the phone or the chat or whatever goes silent for a minute while they think about it because it's like, how do I explain to her that this person, for whatever reason, isn't going to help me? It's difficult and it's embarrassing and it's isolating because so often, because of the way we're all raised and conditioned, we think we should be doing all of those things too. And we're embarrassed and ashamed because we watch other women who seem to be able to do it effortlessly. They send out all their invitations on time and they're beautiful. Their families are somehow organized into perfect holiday photos. And all you can do sometimes is sit back and look and go, God, why couldn't I do it like that? So it's a source of shame for a lot of us and it's very unfair.
We're going to pause right here for a quick minute to tell you a little bit about some virtual open houses coming up at Landmark College. On December 15th and January 7th, you can get an idea of what it's like to be a student at Landmark College. They are having all sorts of events on those 2 days, a live chat session with admissions counselors, a student panel Q&A, a staff panel Q&A. They have a lot of good things going on. So if you've heard us talk about Landmark and you're curious to see what it's like for you or someone you love, check out their virtual open house. You can register and get more information by going to lcdistraction.org and click on open houses and visits on the left-hand column for more information.
So, what do we do about that experience and how do we ask for the help that we need? And how do we even like, as I'm saying, the help that we need, I think therein lies the problem. We see managing all of these household tasks as our job, and anyone else who lives in the house and benefits from them, well, yes, that's what they're supposed to do. We're there as kind of the household hub. That's an expectation that I think is unreasonable and unfair. If we're if we're living in a house where there's all of these people who are benefiting from this labor, why can they not contribute? And I'm sorry, mowing a lawn and taking the trash out, while those are very helpful and necessary things, those are not the day-to-day trudgery and redundancy that is maintaining dishes, making sure that the bathroom is clean, um, cooking a meal, thinking about what to cook. Like, God, aren't you tired of trying to think about what to cook? So it's not helping us. It's contributing to the household that you benefit from. So it's kind of like a stone soup. Everybody brings what they have and everyone gets to eat the soup at the end. What contribution level you're contributing at, like, of course, is to be predetermined by your family. But again, it's not that we need help so much as other people need to put their fair share in. So I think an important place to start is with expectations. Tell people what they can expect from you as far as contribution to the household and what you're not good at. Like, as for me, I'm not good at household paperwork. If it has to be filled out and it has to be mailed somewhere, I don't know when it's going to get there. I mean, it'll get there eventually, hopefully on time. But that's an area that I struggle in. So maybe I'm not the right person to do that task. Maybe I'm not the person to do the dishes because I cooked a meal and I'm exhausted. Or maybe there's a sensory issue where touching that slimy, nasty food kind of makes me want to crawl out of my skin and I can't stand it. By the way, if that's you, get some dish gloves. It's incredibly helpful. But also, it's okay to say, maybe the dishes aren't my thing. Right here is where you can find out a lot about your spouse and what their gender role expectations are, because some people will balk at this point and say, no, I'm not going to do more. You need to figure it out. And then you kind of have to sit and think about what you want to do with that and what that means for you and how you feel about it. At that point, in my opinion, if you're overwhelmed and your spouse is not going to help, then your spouse needs to pay. It's time to get some hired help in there and get someone to, do more around the house, maybe do the things that you can't do. But another blockade to that is the spouse who says, "No, I'm not going to help." And "No, I'm not going to pay for you to hire someone because that's ridiculous. You should be able to clean the house." At that point, okay, get ready to bleep me, Sarah. Sarah Girton is our producer. At this point, you need to ask yourself why you're married to someone who thinks you're a pack mule whose only function is to make sure to clean up after their messes. Fuck that. I think this was one of the turning points in my own marriage because I realized I didn't want to be treated like a servant in my own home. I wanted an equal contribution. And that's not everyone's thing. So if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, well, that's good for her, that's not what I want. I think that everyone has a right to live under the rules and expectations that they want. So if being the household hub and being the manager of everything is your thing, that's okay too. If you're doing it and it's working for you and you don't mind, cool. If it's not working for you and you want to find other ways to do it better, that is also fine. But if you're like me and you want to disconnect from that idea because it's not realistic for you, that too is fine. Like, I think the most important part of empowering women is to empower them to make their own choice, even if that choice doesn't match what you need. We don't all need the same things. So if this doesn't bother you, it's okay to say, that was an interesting episode that I listened to, but that's not the way that my household is going to run. But if you're feeling isolated and lonely and frustrated and taken advantage of by this dynamic, you're not alone. And if you're angry and resentful about it, you aren't the first. And I just want you to know that you don't have to do this. It's okay to stand up for yourself and say, this isn't the way that I want my household to run. And this isn't something that makes me happy. And this is not something that I've agreed to do alone. I have a life partner, and that life partner needs to contribute more to keep our household functioning the way that it should. So don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. And if you're not heard, it's better to know that now and make your decisions about what you want to do about that, because there's a myriad of decisions that can be made. It doesn't have to be a deal breaker, but it might be for some of you. So I just wanted to reach out and let you know you're not alone in those feelings and that you are allowed to kind of cast off the shame and blame that you feel there and connect with people and have conversations about what you need moving forward. It's never too late to make a change. Thank you so much for listening. And I really hope that you took something today that will help you feel a little more empowered going forward, no matter which direction you're headed in. Please reach out to us and let us know what you think. Record a voice memo or write an email and send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our producer is Sarah Girton. I'm René Brooks. You can find me at blackgirllostkeys.com and on Twitter at blkgirllostkeys. Until next time.
The episode you just heard was made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.